For the first time since 2004, the Toronto Maple Leafs have won a first-round playoff series, advancing to the second round to face off against the Florida Panthers. Yes, that is correct. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers kick off on Tuesday, May 2nd, their second-round series, teeing that all up with the boys from the Rink Rat Report. Leafs fans, let's get to it. What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. And yes, you did hear that correctly in the intro. This is the first ever second-round playoff preview here on the Leafs Digest channel. But not only that, this is the first second-round preview for majority of Leafs fans out there who were born in 2004 and later. So sitting here just waiting and waiting and waiting for a Leafs second round to finally get underway. And they're playing against the Florida Panthers. I don't think many people or anybody really saw that coming, considering they were going up against the Boston Bruins, who set an NHL record for wins in a season, points in a season on top of that. And yet the Florida Panthers find a way to get it done in Game 7 in overtime. So joining me here today to help us break it all down, the boys from the Rink Rat Report. You can find them at Rink Rat Report on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, where you can get all of your highlights, breakdowns, reactions, all that kind of stuff over there on their socials, as well as you can find them on all podcast platforms as Rink Rat Report. And if you're looking for Jason's Twitter as well specifically, you can find him at Takes by Jay, but Pizz over there on the very right. I would plug your solo Twitter, but you're running the Rink Rat Report stuff, right?
Yeah, I have a burner account at @RRR_burner, but it's never used. So it's at Rink Rat Report.
I think you just kind of ruined the point of it being a burner now by exposing it.
Well, it's called at RRR burner. The entire activity is just liking all of the Rink Rat Report stuff. I wonder who runs that account.
Fair enough. Well, here today, we're going to get into another series preview. So we're going to break down everything pertaining to the second round matchup against the Florida Panthers, some of the key lineup matchups, how we're looking for lines coming out of the first round, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we're looking for in the second round here, as well as maybe some concerns about this team, whether it be about Sheldon Keefe or special teams or just how we match up in general against Florida, ways that this thing could potentially go south and what to avoid against the Panthers in the second round. And finally, we will get to our picks and predictions for this series. So let's start it off here with the lineups. And the lineups for us, I think the three of us are probably going to be on pretty much the same page, but let's first and foremost take a look at the lineups that came out from Mark Masters from TSN earlier today from the Leafs Skate. So we'll run through these and we'll go through them one line at a time. I think this is the best way to do it. So starting with the first line put out here, Knies, Matthews, Nylander. Boys, I'm just going to go Pizz first and foremost, right to you. You look at that Knies, Matthews, Nylander line. We saw it at the end of the series against Tampa there. It was a little bit jumbled in a sense because we did watch an 11-7 deployment with Justin Hall going in the stands, Liljegren and Gustafsson coming in, and then Lafferty, Zach Aston-Reese coming out. But you see Knies, Matthews, Nylander. Are you comfortable with this line? Would you make adjustments? Or what was your initial thoughts there?
Sorry to start off on such a shitty note, but the only kind of downside I saw with it was the ability of Matthew Knies to take the puck off the boards in his own end. Had a couple turnovers in Game 6 specifically, one that led to a goal. But yeah, I think the offensive upside is just incredible. His shot with that velocity is sickening. His hands are sneaky good too. He's a good puck hunter on the forecheck, similar to what we saw from Michael Bunting there. So he does bring some good energy to that top line. He does add some really good stuff, to put it as general as possible. So yeah, I do like that line. We'll see where we go from there. I mean, the good thing about the Leafs lineup, though, you can go our next option isn't Alex Kerfoot. Our next option is then Michael Bunting, and we have some other guys that we can mix in there too. So I'm okay for Game 1 going with Knies, Matthews, Nylander. I think the upside is good, and yeah, we'll see how we progress from there.
And I think, Pizz, you nailed it right there. Knies earned this promotion to the top line. If Knies maybe didn't play as well throughout the series, fine. I could totally understand Michael Bunting being on that line. But I think this is more so Matthew Knies earning his way up the lineup. And on top of that, if we're going to be honest, listen, I know we're starting off on a tough note, but William Nylander at 5-on-5. I wanted to see a little bit more out of him from last series. He only had 2 5-on-5 points. And again, I'm not criticizing his play. I think he still played well, but I think there's definitely room for him to give a little bit more in this series. I think this series might actually be a good series for him to might play a little bit better into his style of play. Florida seems to be a more high event team. They like to kind of transition the puck a little bit more, and William Nylander can take advantage of that, especially when you look on their back end compared to Tampa. Tampa's a much more defensively sound team. So William Nylander, I'm looking at this line. I'm circling him. I'm saying he's going to have a better series from last series. He's going to be a key factor in this series. And
also on top of that, if you keep him away from Tavares, I think that's going to be fairly easy. He was with Tavares way too much in that series, and on 5-on-5, his play really suffered. But when they switch it to Matthews, or even O'Reilly, you can switch it to Matthews or O'Reilly, and I think he'll have some success there.
Yeah, no, other thing I was thinking about too, when you put this line together, you kind of look at the situation that you have if you go Nylander, Tavares. They are, and I don't want to call them bad, but they're vanilla. That is what that line kind of gives you. It's nothing special. It's nothing really you're going to sit there and say, this is gross, we don't want this anymore. But it's just what are they doing? They're not really kind of providing too much from that standpoint. And then if you put Nyes on that wing with Tavares and Nylander, which we had seen them kind of throw out the possibility of that line, then you kind of feel like you're ending up with a defensively liable line across the board. And it's not to say that Nyes going out there is a bad defensive option. It's just that he's not the best defensive option. And then you put him with Tavares and Nylander, and then you're kind of sitting there going, okay, now our second line, which, they could potentially be potent on offense. You can't trust them too much in the defensive zone from that standpoint, which could be a little bit concerning. You're going to maybe avoid them on defensive zone draws and stuff, so they could pin it there. But I'm fine with the Nyes, Matthews, Nylander line as it is. And it's going to lead me to the next point here as we do look at the second line that we have. Pulling up here from Mark Masters, Järnkrok, Tavares, Marner. I don't know if you guys agree with this point, but I look at it like this, and people complained and got worried and said, oh my God, I can't believe Matthews needs Marner. I don't think Matthews needs Marner. I think Tavares needs Marner, and I think that Matthews can work with anybody. I just think he probably needs a little bit more consistency. So, okay, he's played with William Nylander for a good chunk of the season. He's got that chemistry with them. They know each other well. I think that's going to be fine. I think Tavares needs Marner, and I think this is probably actually the optimal slot for Tavares and Marner to be in together. And then Järnkrok to me on the other side, I said it to Jason before, Pizz, I think I've talked to you about it, but Järnkrok just performs better in the top 6 than he does in the bottom 6. And hopefully he can find a way to fit into this lineup here, but I'm fine with this line as is, especially with that point being, I think Marner is that kind of crutch essentially to Tavares, where Tavares needs Marner. I don't know if that's a hot take or if you guys agree, but I'm good with this second line as is.
Yeah, I'm good with the second line as well. I think, like you said, Marner and Tavares worked really well together. We saw those early years with the Leafs here, when John Tavares originally came and joined us through free agency. Mitch Marner and him were stuck together like glue with Babcock behind the bench, and hey, it worked well. John Tavares had a career year when he was playing with Mitch Marner, right? So obviously these guys, one, have chemistry, two, play very well off of each other. The addition of Järnkrok, I understand what you're saying, Zach, where he's better in the top 9. I'm just still a little iffy on it. I really think, again, Järnkrok is more in this top 6 role as a result of his play. It's the opposite of the first line, where I think Bunting, they're not going to give Bunting the top 6 just yet. They're going to make him earn it. Whereas Matthew Nyes clearly earned the top 6. Calle Järnkrok, I thought his play was a little bit all over the place again last series. He was one of the few forwards who I kind of expected more out of and didn't get as much of. But I think putting him on this line, he could do very well. And again, this the team that we're playing against is much different than Tampa. We'll get into the matchups a little bit later. But I think the construction of having Järnkrok on this line, I think it's the best fit when you look at the third line and how that's put together. But we'll get to that in a sec.
I'm going to disagree a little bit with Jason there. I really like the combination of Marner Järnkrok. Järnkrok isn't a play driver, so that's where Zach feeds into your point of he's better in the top 6 versus the bottom 6, because he needs those skilled players to give him those looks. But guess what? He's going to finish on those looks. He's the anti-Alex Kerfoot, almost, you can call him. But I do agree he didn't have the production that we saw from the regular season, especially the second half of the regular season in that playoff series. But, in the playoffs, you need those depth guys. You need those secondary guys to chip in here and there. And I think with the combination of the sickening shot in close of Calle Yarncroc and the sweet feeds of Mitch Marner will help to chip in there, we'll call it.
And the other point that I was thinking about here when I saw this line was kind of breaking some of it down, and like where I would have some pushback on you as well, Jason, with some of it is like, I think Yarncroc helps that line more defensively than Bunting would being there, where Bunting going alongside Tavares just makes that line a little bit less defensively responsible or capable. And it's not to say that Yarncroc is like some Selke winning forward out there by any means, but he's a guy who is a little bit more defensively responsible and maybe aware than a guy like Michael Bunting is. So he kind of just elevates that second line up a little bit. But yeah, I'm happy with this line. You know what, honestly, for the most part, as we go through these, you guys are just going to hear me say I'm pretty happy with this line. But as it is right now,
they make sense.
I think
they looked pretty good. I mean,
yeah, and we saw them kind of close out the series like that. Was it the best that we had seen this Leafs team play? No, it wasn't. Obviously, it was one series where we walked away from and went, oh my God, we actually didn't deserve to win that one, and we did. But you got through. So. Yeah, I mean, let's transition here to the third line as well, bringing up the Masters tweet again. Bunting, O'Reilly, Acciari. Guys, I only have 1 point, and it's one of those ones where it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, or like a million other sayings that you could apply to this one, but it's like, I fell in love with the Nyes, O'Reilly, Acciari line together. I thought they were probably the Leafs' best line in terms of consistency for the 2.5 game stretch, maybe it was, that they played together in the series against Tampa. That being said, I understand the elevation of Nyes, so I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. It's more one of those ones where it's just like, I actually just loved seeing Nyes with them. But again, to the point that I made defensively, is Bunting the most responsible or capable defensive forward? Not really, but you know who's there to help him out? Noel Acciari and Ryan O'Reilly, two guys who can play penalty kill and late game situations for this Leafs team. So it kind of just like takes away some of the worries that you might have. So again, for the third time on these three forward lines, I'm happy with it. I'm okay with it.
I agree. I mean, I can kind of see that switch though that you mentioned there, Bunting up to the first line, Nyes to the third line. I mean, that is a seamless switch, I would say. But for now, I think Michael Bunting had a decent game 6. He did what he needed to there. It wasn't like a terrific one. He had a couple shots on net, couple looks here and there. It wasn't like, out of this world Michael Bunting that we saw last year kind of at points. But, I think this line is decent. But, yeah, and overall these lines are pretty good. They make sense when you cut them up line by line. But I can see a lot of different switches happening here and there.
Yeah, and the switching could happen, and I think this is actually a smart way to start this series with the third line, because one thing I noticed that it's kind of outside the realm of like between whistles, where I'm thinking outside the whistles right now. Who better to have beside Michael Bunting than Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari when you're playing guys like Radko Gudas, Matthew Tkachuk, the Stahl brothers, right? Even Dalpe's got a little kick in his game. The fourth liners on Florida, like they're a little pesky, right? They're not afraid to muck things up between whistles, outside the whistle. So having Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari kind of by Michael Bunting's side, I think that'll deter some of the Florida players from trying to get under his skin. And I thought Michael Bunting did a great job of being a little standoffish in the game 6. So I think that in that sense, this line works really well. But also, like 5-on-5, this line works well too, because again, like 3 strong offensive forwards with 2 incredibly defensively responsible forwards in O'Reilly and Acciari. And if Bunting could just kind of shore things up in his own zone and not overthink where he's supposed to be, and just identify where he's supposed to be in his own zone, this is I think a rock star line. No matter who you put on this line, though, Bunting or Nyes, this third line is amazing, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it amazing. I mean, this is a Leafs Homer podcast, but let's back it up a little bit. It's solid. I think it lacks a little bit of transition ability, but I do think it has some dogs on it.
Yeah, I like it especially from the get into the offensive zone perspective. One thing that I talked about here, and one thing I think is kind of a little bit of an underrated piece of a game, is having a third or fourth line who can maintain offensive zone pressure. And maybe, like, you'd love for them to be able to turn it around and create offense. I think that they have guys here, especially in Bunting and O'Reilly, who can do that. And you have a guy like Achari who, he can finish and he can create, he can kind of bury opportunities. Maybe he's not going to create them, but he can bury on some of the opportunities that he's put in if he's in front of the net, which is likely what his responsibility would kind of come to with these two guys. But one of the benefits that you get of having this third line, and especially the way we saw Keefe start to use guys in the end of Game 4, Game 5 a little bit, and Game 6 there, was go get offensive zone pressure, hold the other team into the zone for 30, 45 seconds, a minute, hold them out there, and then slowly filter guys out for a change. But guess what? David Kampf and Alex Kerfoot aren't the next guys out the door, because Ryan O'Reilly, Achari, and Bunting are out there as your third line. Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and Matthew Knies are the next guys coming out on the ice. Or a combination of Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. And next thing you know, Tampa's been in their zone for a minute and a half, a minute 45, 2 minutes now, and you've got the best offensive players on the Leafs coming out the door. Again, that's a line that can sustain pressure, I think, and kind of keep it down below the goal line, put that pressure on you, and just hem you in there for a period of time to either wear you out or frustrate you. And then on top of that, okay, maybe they can't come out right away and generate something, but maybe Florida's going to have to ice the puck here. And maybe you put complete fresh legs out off an offensive zone draw. I think there's benefits to that line. But again, I like it, and I think that there's that flexibility, like you said, Pizz, of, okay, maybe you need to switch something. Bunting, first line, Knies, third line. And again, people need to remember with a lot of this when we're looking at these lines are not going to be played like 1-2-3. These lines are likely going to be played like 1-2-2 in a situation like that, and then maybe they're going to basically play the same amount of minutes. So don't panic if you start to see Matthew Knies go down to the quote-unquote third line. Like, that's not necessarily what that means. So that's kind of how I view the Leafs lines through that top 9 as it is right now. But that also leaves us with the remaining players here, according to Master's tweet. Aston Reese, Kampf, and Kerfoot on the fourth line. Looks like Lafferty on the outside looking in right now. Where are you guys at on this? Pizz, go to you first. Like, what do you think about that fourth line and Lafferty being left out?
Yeah, I had some, I think, reasonable expectations for Sam Lafferty after they traded for him. I mean, the speed is nice. The speed is noticeable. But just the underlying numbers every single game this series have sucked. Like, you can't put it any worse. They have just been horrible. I tell people, it's like he does a great job being first to the puck. He does a great job continuing cycles. But if it's not on his stick, off his stick quickly, like, he gets the puck on his stick and it's almost like he gets a Men in Black flash in front of his eyes and he forgets what the hell he's doing out there. He lacks a lot of hockey sense. So I'm not surprised that he's on the outside looking in. They gave him several chances, and unfortunately it didn't work out. I think it will work out better next season after they get some time to work with him. Well, like, it better work out next season. He was part of a pretty big trade. But, you know, I'm all right with, I thought Aston Reese was better than him. I guess they like the 12-6 kind of the, you know, you're not jumbling it so much with the lines. I mentioned last episode with Jason on the Rink Rat Report podcast, like, having that 7D kind of was a little bit jumbled, and you ended up at a time with Gustafsson and Riley out there, which is something you really don't want. Like, just pretty much had 5 forwards on the ice at that time. So yeah, I think adding that stability of like the 12-6, or the consistency is a better word, is a better idea.
Yeah, and honestly, one thing I was shocked by from Aston Reese in the previous series, I sent this to you guys, and I believe this was before Game 5, so I think it's just Game 1, 2, 3, 4. It might have included Game 5 as well. But just looking at some micro stats, his exits and controlled exits, he shockingly had 21 exits and 13 controlled exits. That puts him second on the Leafs in exiting the puck out of our zone. Second, if you can believe that. Now, obviously, some of that has to do with the fact that David Kampf does not exit the puck very much, and Sam Lafferty barely had any touches in the defensive zone and also was not exiting the puck. So he was kind of the only guy exiting the puck there. And you don't really think of Zach Aston Reese as that guy to exit the puck. He did have 9 turnovers, So that was a little shocking, but again, that could be a small sample thing. And all this could be a small sample thing. Just one thing that I think when I see this line is a lot better in transition than I think it is. Just from based off those raw numbers, we know how good Alex Kerfoot is, but Zach Aston-Reese can also do those things in transition. So what I see here is a defensively responsible fourth line who can get the puck out of our zone and potentially create, like you said, Zach, what we want to see in the offensive zone, those long-winded shifts for where you get a cycle going, kind of hem Florida in their own zone and tire them out, and then get the big guns to come out to capitalize on it. That's what I see with this fourth line, and also. This fourth line is good enough defensively, I feel like, to match with probably majority of the lines on Florida. Now, Florida has some really good forwards, so it might be a little bit harder, but Keefe has shown that he likes to use his fourth line to line match against other teams' better lines. So I think with this mix, swapping Lafferty and Kerfoot, you have this line has a much better defined role and is better at that role than previously with Lafferty.
Well, I agree with that. I think that especially with the way Keefe deploys them, he kind of likes to do that and jump that fourth line into spots against upper lines of other teams. Like we saw that in the Tampa Bay series. But the one thing that I kind of looked at when I was looking at Florida's lines ahead of this series is that if you go mono-a-mono, fourth line versus fourth line, I think this fourth line as is can take over and beat and be much better than Tampa's fourth line. And it's a low bar to set, I guess, considering like when you look across at the offensive ability of David Kampf, Zach Aston-Reese alongside Alex Kerfoot, a guy that we got ragged on basically all year of like, man, this guy's can't finish, can't score, and people like lost their minds over him. But I look at that and I just look at where Florida's fourth line is, and if they go head to head, I think our fourth line could take advantage of it. So I like the stability, like Pizz said, where you kind of can rely on the consistency of, okay, 12-6, let's get into a little bit more of a cleaner structure, and let's not try to mess around with having to switch around fourth line guys in and out, and then you can rotate through your top nine and move those guys in and out. So I'm fine with this. I mean, obviously, we're not going to be sitting here talking about this fourth line at the end of the series and be like, wow, they scored somewhere between 5 to 10 goals in it, but hey, eliminate Florida's opportunities, eliminate the goals that they score. I'm fine with that. The one thing that I think was a good way to kind of describe what the fourth line did for a lot of the regular season was they were just like the fast forward button. When they went on the ice, there was basically 0 goals against. Did they score? No, not really, but there was 0 goals against. So you basically just put them out for 30, 45 seconds and you're just getting through a shift where the top 9 rests. And there is some value to that. As much as Leafs fans might want to sit here and be like, I can't believe these guys don't score, there's some value to that. Getting through shifts and killing some time and being defensively responsible, I'm okay with those guys. So, yeah, I do like the 12-6, and it's nothing against Lafferty. I thought he was going to be somewhat effective here. Hasn't really worked out, and if it doesn't, you got to make adjustments to take the guys out of the lineup. So that's kind of where we're at through the forwards, but I think it's a pretty good breakdown there. Let's get to the defense. I really don't have too much to say about it, but we'll pull these up. I'll see where you guys are at. I think there's one lightning rod of a piece that everyone across Toronto, and when I say everyone, I mean literally everyone, my grandparents and aunts and uncles are asking me about this guy, but thankfully comes out of the lineup in Game 6, and it looks like he hasn't made his way back in, and so that would be Justin Hall. Looking at the lines here from Mark Masters, you look at top line, Riley, Shen, McCabe, Brody, second pair, Giordano, Liljegren, and then it looks like Gustafsson and Hall on the outside looking in. I mean, in terms of the changes that are made here for number 3, Justin Hall being on the outside, the movement that you see around that, looks like Liljegren's going to stay in. If we're going 12-6, Gustafsson would be the odd man out in this situation. Jason, do you agree with this? And keeping Liljegren and him being the 6th man and Gustafsson kind of coming out, staying with the 12-6, and then just keeping the other guys together?
Yeah, I think I agree with sticking with the 12-6 over going back to the 11-7. I think the 11-7 was a very specific, calculated move. We talked about this on the live stream, if you caught that, and we talked about this on our post game reaction on the Rink Rat Report. But it was a calculated move by Sheldon Keefe because, listen, if you're rolling the blender and you're throwing out different lines every different shift, it's almost impossible to line match that, and that's kind of what that's John Cooper's ace in the hole that he has over almost every other coach in the NHL. He's a really smart guy and he's able to line match really well and knows how to structure his lines against other teams' lines. So that was, I think, almost a special a special move by Sheldon Keefe to kind of quell what the Lightning brought. Now, going back to 12 and 6, I think this is going to help out our defensemen get a little bit more structure, I think, and be a little bit more, I guess, chemistry, get the chemistry back, get the consistency back. They're going to be able to break out the puck a little bit better than we saw in Game 6. The biggest thing, obviously, is Justin Hall. The big question: what are we doing with Justin Hall? I honestly thought he'd
There's no question.
Drop back. I guess not, but I genuinely thought that after like the new series almost hit the reset button, I thought Sheldon Keefe would bring him back into this lineup here. But I mean, from the looks of it, it looks like Timothy Liljegren's in, and honestly, deservedly so. He didn't make any mistakes, and that's kind of what you want to see out of him playing with Mark Giordano. If they just as a third unit do not make any mistakes, I'm happy here. And the main thing that Justin Hall brings from a specialty standpoint is his PK ability. Like this, I hope this doesn't come back to bite me in the butt, but Florida's been one of the worst power play teams in the NHL in the playoffs so far. And obviously very small sample, but they haven't been able to capitalize on the 5-on-4. They had a one, I believe they had 2 goals at 5-on-4, and one of them was at 4-on-3. And then their only other man advantage goal was when they had the net pulled. So they only really had, I think, 4 or 5 goals with the man advantage, which is not that many when you look back at this series and see how many penalties Boston had. So their power play wasn't really converting that much. So again, having a PK specialist like Justin Hall, yeah, that makes more sense against Tampa, where you have Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos, who are like one of the best power play duos in the NHL. But, and again, no disrespect to Florida here, but it's just, if we look at the numbers, their power play just hasn't been able to get it done to the clip that Tampa has. So I think Liljegren drawing in makes a little bit more sense. As long as we can keep the turnovers down and we can not make mistakes, I'm super happy with this.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, Justin Hall was just incredibly bad. I thought it was very ballsy from Keefe to not only put one defenseman that hasn't played in a while, but two in place of him. So now it kind of sets you up good for the next series too, because both of them looked all right in Game 6. So why not keep rolling with, I guess, one of them that you've gotten some good quality top 4 play from him earlier this year. In regards to the Florida power play, yeah, it was 5. I counted it was 5 goals on the power play from Florida this year. So this playoffs. So maybe leaving the PK specialist who couldn't seem to do anything else in that series on the sidelines makes sense for now. But
and wasn't even that great on the penalty kill.
No, he was pretty good. He was all right. I mean,
his willingness to block shots is definitely something that was a positive to see.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
The one thing someone pointed out to me Friday before Game 6, they were like, look at Stamkos on the power play. He hasn't done much in this series because of Justin Hall. Justin Hall's always flopped on that side. And then in Game 6, you got a one-timer off a good one-timer from Stamkos, and then a good one-timer off the post from Stamkos. So right away it clicked. I was like, oh, there we are. But yeah, makes sense to keep rolling with Timothy Liljegren. I mean, yeah, I think it could be a massive positive, and I think it could really help Mark Giordano, who, I mean, let's not mince words. He did not have a very good series either.
Yeah. That's the one thing I was thinking about is Giordano didn't have the greatest series in that one against Tampa either. So, I mean, you give him Liljegren, who we played well with last year. Maybe you kind of inject some of those young legs into him where it's the guy who can go up and down the ice, and Gio doesn't necessarily have to be as concerned to be the guy in that pairing to advance the puck up, which he would have to be when he's matched up with Justin Hall, but take some of that pressure away, get Liljegren in there, who is fresh, has played or hasn't played as much over the last little while, so he's got some rested legs, I guess, which had been a concern for us, but he looked fine in the game that he jumps in against Tampa. And then in terms of the other pairings as they're set, I mean, Morgan Rielly goes, he's tied for 12th in the NHL playoff points, or he was as of last night before the games that took place there. So he goes and he's having a really good postseason so far from an offensive standpoint. Him and Luke Schenn are among the top 5 on the Leafs in their expected goals for percentage during that first series. Luke Schenn is second in the NHL in hits. So you're looking at this guy like, he kind of just feels like he's been this stabilizing presence alongside Morgan Rielly. I'm not going to say it's the exact same, but very similar to the style that we saw Ron Hainsey kind of play to Rielly, where it's like you go be Morgan Riley and don't worry about doing this whole defense thing because you're not very good at it. Like, I got you back here. And obviously it's not like just Luke Shen is like a world beater defenseman, but he's more defensively minded and can kind of just calm things down from perspective of playing alongside Riley. So that pair is fine to me. And then just looking at McCabe Brody, they're really good throughout the end of the regular season. They didn't have the best series against Tampa, but they're also playing big minutes, and they were playing against top lines on Tampa regularly in that series. And on top of that, I think that Jake McCabe just kind of brought a lot of intangibles that we haven't really seen from some of the defensemen on this team before, where it's stepping up and making big hits, like the one against Perry in Game 6 through the neutral zone, or eating like 6 consecutive pills on penalty kills where he's just taking them off his feet, the inside of his knees. Like, this guy doesn't care, man. Remember when the Leafs went out and got like Tim Gleason and he was eating pucks with his face? Like, I'm like watching this guy, I'm like, oh my God, like he's just jumping in front of anything and everything. And there's something to be said about having a guy like that. And even if he's not having the best series, it's that like whole mindset of like, I'm not playing my best game right now. What can I do to help the team? Well, I can level guys at center ice and not let them get the zone, and I can block 1,000,000 shots this game. It's like, all right, I'm fine with that. So I think that Brody-McCabe pairing will kind of start to get themselves back in order here. And once this pressure is kind of lifted off them a little bit, I think they're going to be in good position. But yeah, I'm fine with the defense.
Especially Brody. I didn't think he had Brody didn't have the best series against Tampa, but hell, I mean, he came up big when you needed him. He had that assist on the Austin Matthews goal, so kudos to him there.
Yeah, and that's exactly why you bring in a guy like McCabe to play alongside Brody, where if Brody ever does falter, right, you do have a defensively responsible partner with him who can pick up the slack maybe if he's if he wasn't playing and he didn't play as well. So that's kind of what McCabe brought. And like you said, that shot blocking ability, that physicality. And like, hey, some people were worried about his penalties leading into the playoffs. Only 6 penalty minutes. And one of them was because someone shot the puck after the whistle and he broke their stick on them. Like, give me that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. Let's get to concerns in this series. Things to look out for, things that maybe we need to avoid, or things that might come back to haunt this team or bite us in the ass throughout this series against Florida, as this one is one that is the Leafs are heavily favored in. So we'll jump right away to something we saw in Game 6. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Just kind of want to know where you guys are at. Are you at all concerned about the fact that Ryan O'Reilly went 2 for 11 in the faceoff dot in Game 6? I wasn't in the moment, and then I saw people online speculating maybe this guy re-aggravated his finger. Is that a concern for you? Do you think that played a factor? Like, where does that fit into your thought process going into the next series here?
Well, if he is hurt, then yes, I'm concerned. If he's not hurt, then no, I'm concerned. I think him being hurt and the face-off things are two separate things. I guess they could go kind of hand in hand, where if he's hurt and that's the reason why his face-offs are poor. I think it's some people trying to explain away what happened here. I think, though, like, I'm going to have to watch this back, but I feel like a lot of these face-off losses were probably more winger losses than center losses. And if you want, go check me out on Twitter at TakesByJ. I'm going to post all of his face-offs from last game. Quick little plug there. You check it out for yourself.
That's some electric content right there. You've got face-off highlights from Game 6.
You check it out for yourself. You tell
me we need it, though.
Yeah, like
not the hero we asked for, the hero we needed.
But no, I'm really not concerned with it, honestly. I think he'll be fine. And worst case scenario, if he is doing poorly on the draw, you have Noah Chari right beside him, so he can just come in and take those draws. So
yeah.
Holy, this guy's
sorry for the plug.
The best investment this guy's ever made in stat. Right here. So you can look at face-offs there. That's insanely funny. I can't wait to watch that video though. But I mean, the finger thing, obviously, I'm concerned about everything. Damn, like Austin Matthews blocked a shot and I went, okay, that's the end of it. I'm packing it up. I'm moving to Chile. And he was out there next shift. So I'm concerned about everything. My paranoia level is extremely high. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how he looks next game. If it's noticeable, if Jason picks up anything, then, yeah. Until then, I'll...
We're going to see like red flags on this guy's Twitter account, and then I'm just shutting everything down. That's it. Pizz, I'm going with you, man. We're out here. Yeah. But I don't know. I'll just say I'm not really as concerned about it, because one thing I saw people saying that, Look, maybe it's bothering him. I don't know. But to Jason's point, Achari's there beside him. And then my thought on it was he was still fine at 5-on-5 play and like playing in the rest of the game. Like he didn't look like he was laboring anything. So personally, I'm not concerned. But we're not going to get any type of injury report until like after this playoff run is done, and hopefully that's after he's holding the Stanley Cup and you see him with a cast on his finger while he's holding the cup. Like that's hopefully that's the moment that we find out. But I'm not really concerned. Another thing I had here for you guys, I was wondering about. I told you before we started, I have a take. If it's ridiculous, you tell me. I was thinking about it, and I was wondering, okay, do we have a concern that Bobrovsky is hot here? He didn't start the series for Florida against Boston. He comes in and he plays really well. I'm not concerned, and here's why. I think the Bruins were an extremely lucky team all season long on converting on opportunities and scoring on their scoring chances and stuff. I think they were performing above where they should have been. And I think in a large sense, it started to come back down to earth towards the end of the season. And then we really saw it in the playoffs there, where that luck that they had all season just wasn't quite there. And I think that made Bob look a little bit better. And then the other thing, he was going head to head with Ullmark first, who was clearly injured. They've come out and said that he was injured. And then he went in against Swayman and went head to head with Swayman. And I'm not taking anything away from Bob and what he did in those last couple of games. But I think that people are going to look at the fact that he walked away with a couple wins against the Bruins and say, man, this guy was incredible. He helped them. I think he played well. But I don't think this is like we're staring down another Andrei Vasilevsky here. I think he was kind of inflated, maybe not numbers-wise, but in people's minds in terms of the result of what happened after the fact when considering some of the other things that went on with Boston to lead Boston to be the team who kind of blew that series, as much as Florida did take it away from them. Am I insane? Am I kind of on the right track here? Where am I at with my Bob take?
I'm going to give it to the goalie guy first. Yeah.
I think you're on the right track. I mean, look at it, 891 save percentage. Like,
yeah.
Like Bobrovsky, I think is a fantastic goaltender. He has some insane tools. Like his skating, I think is incredible. The size, just the sheer size of the lad is incredible too. It's a sight for sore eyes, but he is leaky and he does open up and sometimes he does overplay pucks. And I mean, we saw the Leafs, it was coming off of a back-to-back, albeit, but we did see the Leafs get to him a couple times this year, did we not? At least a couple, if not more, I want to say. There was a game, Jason, we went to, and we saw, 7 goals on him or whatever?
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
He is a fantastic goaltender. I wouldn't doubt that he can get hot. I think that we're in good hands here. Like, we did see Vasilevsky heat up towards the end of the series, but, the Leafs still got to him in that series. Like, look at how, like, the goals that stand in my mind. I didn't watch every minute of the Florida Boston series, but look at how Tyler Bertuzzi scored. I think he scored a couple like that too. Like, puck went in, did it not? Can you not draw a comparable from those goals to what the Leafs did to Vasilevsky? Like, I think if the Leafs continue just hammering home, get to the front of the net, or get your big guys in front of the net, Tavares, O'Reilly, Achari, all those guys, and win those battles in front of the net, and you will find success offensively. Like, Sergei Bobrovsky's not going to be able to stop what he can't see or what changes direction directly in front of him. But again, he is a fantastic goaltender, not taking anything away from him, but like 901 season save percentage, 891 save percentage against the Bruins, like made a couple big overtime saves, but these are not numbers that scream to me and say, oh, watch out.
Yeah. Well, you guys are being reasonable and citing stats and things like that. I'm just, anytime I see a goalie at the other end of the ice, I honestly get scared. Listen, we got goalied by Merzlikins and Korpisalo, so we can probably get goalied by anyone. So I'm a little afraid, but I think there's some credence to your point there, Zach, about how kind of Boston made Bobrovsky look a little bit better than he is. Boston's game is not like a run and gun type of game, but that's what Florida did, and I think that's what made them successful against Boston in this series. Florida forced Boston to kind of play on their terms, play a more high event hockey instead of being that low event suppression team that we've come to know Boston over the past 10 years. And if you look at the expected goals in this series, it was the highest, pending the Rangers Devils game. It was the highest expected goals total of all the games. So this is a very high event series, so those things will lead to a goal lead looking better. Of course, when you see more high event shots and higher scoring chances. But again, yeah, like you said, the shooting percentage of this team, like Zack, I don't think he's a 60-point player. I don't think he's that good. I think he's good. I don't think he's that good. So definitely riding hot Boston and then just kind of crashing and burning. So I don't know. I guess I didn't really answer that question, but I'm slightly afraid, but at the same time, I think we can do it if we just stick to what we did in the previous series, getting a little dirty, create traffic in front of the net, and I mean that's probably the best way to score in the playoffs. So.
Yeah. To get totally off topic here, Jason and I actually did an episode. We did a statistical deep dive. We compared Boston, Tampa, Toronto, and we found that Boston was mainly just ahead in the converting situation and converting categories and the goalie categories on scoring chances. Like their ability to convert scoring chances into goals was very high, and their ability to stop scoring chances was very high. Their ability to create said scoring chances was not as high as the Leafs or the Lightning. So there is that. And also it doesn't hurt.
What episode was that, Pizz? Plug that for people to go listen to. Do you know off the top of your head?
It was a while. Jason names all the episodes, so he would have that one too. But it also doesn't hurt. Like Patrice Bergeron missed several games in this one. I don't know what his health situation was there. And then Krejci missed herniated disc. There you go. And then David Krejci missed games, did he not? Which was funny because didn't they win all their games when those guys were out?
Yeah, I don't remember which games Krejci missed, but yes, they won the ones that Bergeron was out. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah. All right. Final thing I was wondering about concerns here. Jason kind of touched on the other one in terms of the bunting role. I think that's kind of covered with the third line in terms of O'Reilly and Achari being alongside of him. But one thing I said to Jason, my biggest concern ahead of the series against Tampa, which proved to be real, very real in the first couple of games, was the man behind the bench, Sheldon Keefe. Gave me nightmares going into that series about what he was going to do, how he was going to respond and react and line match and all this kind of stuff. I was terrified. And the first game at minimum, I sat there and I went, my God, we're going to lose this series because of this man. I think he calmed down and didn't go a little bit too ridiculous for the rest. Started to sort things out. He actually had a couple games where he deployed things very well, and I was actually really happy with it. Now going up against Paul Maurice, who seems to be someone who around the hockey community they kind of look at and say, this guy kind of stinks now compared to maybe what he used to be. In this matchup, I'm not going to give him the edge necessarily for Sheldon Keefe because I kind of want to see it over a consistent basis where he can prove, okay, yeah, you could outcoach the other guy, but where do you guys come to in this series with the head-to-head of Keefe versus Maurice? Are you feel okay with this? What, like maybe is Maurice just going to be too experienced, too veteran? What's your thoughts on that overall in terms of the coaching matchup?
I think stylistically, I don't really think that Maurice. I don't think he plays like a certain like style where he like focuses heavy on matchup. I think he's a relatively very simple way of coaching, very old school. Let's call it. He's not really focused on getting the correct matchups. At least this is what I remember from playing Winnipeg a bunch. But I think there is a little bit of a kind of pseudo rivalry between I guess Paul Maurice and the Leafs and Keefe and Paul Maurice, just because of how many battles we've had with Winnipeg over the past couple of years when Paul Maurice was the coach. I mean, I made the argument that the Leafs basically ran them out of town after we fed them their lunch money. I think it was 2 years ago. And then Paul Maurice kind of stepped down 2 games later and then ended up being, I don't know if he was fired or if he just left on his own accord, but
maybe he was feeling like Rick Bowness and then just said, I can't do this anymore.
That's honestly probably what it was, but I'm taking the credit for that as a Leafs fan. I think
Could you imagine dealing with prima donnas and having to live in Winnipeg? Oh, come on. Sorry to slander the Jets, but
sorry
great
people
to our
of
friend.
Winnipeg.
Yes, sorry to our one listener in Winnipeg.
They don't have an airport, but they do have a hockey team.
Okay.
I'm not concerned at all with the matchups. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Final thing we'll get to here to close this one out. Series predictions. Want to know who's winning, how many games. We'll just go quickly on this one. Pizz, we'll start with you. Prediction in this series?
Leafs I said 6 last series. I don't like to sound so confident, but 5 stuck in my head, so I'm gonna go 5. Leafs in 5.
Jason?
I'm gonna go Leafs in 6. Leafs love to win in Florida, so we're probably gonna drop 1 or 2 at home, and we'll win all 3 in Florida. Our second home.
I don't want to do that again. I don't want to have to deal with that. But yeah, I'm going Leafs in 5 as well. I'm on the same page as you, Pizz. I think I had Leafs in 6 in the last series as well, but I've also bet on Leafs in 5. So Leafs 4-1, Leafs minus 2.5, Leafs series prices. So yeah, it's money sprinkled everywhere on this one. So I am putting my money where my mouth is on that prediction. But Leafs in 5, that is my prediction as well. Boys, thank you so much for doing this series preview. I can't wait to be back here at the end of round 2 as we tee up round 3 against the winner of Carolina and whoever they play between New York and New Jersey, as that game's underway right now as we record this one. So, I mean, I would say it's been a pleasure doing these with you. It has, but we're not done. We'll be back here at the end of round 2, teeing up round 3. So thanks, guys, for doing this. If you do want to listen to this back again, you can find that on the Rink Rat Report, which you can find on all podcasting platforms as well. You can follow these guys on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're looking for Jason and his highlight reel of Ryan O'Reilly's face-offs from Game 6, you can find him at Takes by Jay. But thank you so much for tuning in here. Hope you enjoyed the series preview. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe here to this channel, and let us know your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. If we missed anything, if you have concerns yourself that weren't covered, drop them in the comments. I can't wait to see them. Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Can't wait to see you all in the live streams. And, I mean, as always, keep believing.